Greetings, family. You're tuned in to the Mind of an Entrepreneur show. I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, and we're going to talk today about establishing trade routes. And remember, this channel, my vibe, everything is all about helping us to become happier, healthier, wealthier, and experiencing more love. And we talk about all kinds of ways in which we can do that. So sit back, relax, and we're going to get started with this show. And let's hope that it is a fabulous one. All right, here we go. You're tuned in to the Mind of an Entrepreneur show with your host, myself, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. I am a multi-million-dollar business developer. I have developed business and real estate around the world, and I want to share with you my mental strategies, my technical strategies, and how I made it in the world of business. So I don't teach theory. I tell you about my life and introduce you to people who can also share with you what they've done to become successful. This is a practical show. This ain't a theory show. You don't want to miss it. So stay tuned.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
Peace and blessings, family. Welcome to the Mind of an Entrepreneur show. Before we do anything, make sure you like and subscribe to the page, like and subscribe to the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad YouTube channel. Hey, that was an intro for our new series that we're going to be starting this Saturday on the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks. Y'all know I like to spice it up for y'all, right? And we're going to be going through the proper handling of people, how many weeks it takes, as taught to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I think you all are going to find this very helpful, some very powerful tools. One of the things that I'm seeing right now just in the world is that part of the reason why a lot of us don't manifest or we don't get anywhere is because we just don't know how to handle people. Some of us just aren't nice. Some of us think that doing business means that you got to be mean and rough and have an attitude. And let me tell you something. Healthy people don't want to deal with unhealthy people, especially when it comes to something very precious like their money or their heart. So we need to talk about becoming happier, healthier, wealthier, and experiencing more love. And a lot of that is wrapped up in how we handle other people. The mark of a civilized person is how they talk to other people, how they handle other people. And I don't care what you saw your favorite business tycoon do back in the day. I don't care. I've had people say to me, well, you know, in slavery, they was mean. We living in a different day and time. That was for then. Now is for now. And if you don't know how to handle people, trust me, in today's fast moving, internet-based, information-based world, you won't get that far. You're going to have a real cap on your income. If you notice, a lot of times, some of the most ratchet people have groups of people that they're really nice to because people understand. Can you imagine somebody writing an algorithm about you and all it does is describe you as this mean and hateful person? That'd be horrible, wouldn't it? So walaikum salam, Sister Sandra, Sister Diane, everyone else who's just hiding up here, not in the chat. So welcome. I hope you all will tune in also Saturday. We're going to talk a little bit about trade routes today. So today for the show, I made sure that I wore everything by somebody Black. So this head wrap came from Sister Sajdah Muhammad and her collection. My hair was done by a Black sister. I got this pendant on that I got in Africa from an African merchant. I got this blazer from an African seamstress. You can't see me, but I got on these pants they're dark pants that go with it. It's all black, just black on black. Earrings, jewelry. This is all from the Silver Room. I think these are from Africa somewhere. Anyway, we're going to talk about trade routes. We're going to talk about supporting Black businesses and setting up an ecosystem. Again, remember, y'all know my goal is to help us become what? Happier, healthier, wealthier, and experiencing more love. We talk about how to get to that. We talk about the mother of that, which is tuning in to nature and to Almighty God Allah. We talk about how to handle people. We talk about doing for self. We talk about all of these things that's going to help to get us there. And our purpose for discussing trade routes today, I'm not going to get a chance to go into every single trade route. Okay, I'm just going to skim the surface. But what I want to do is motivate us. I want to motivate us to develop networks and ecosystems where we trade goods and services with one another. Let's develop a healthy pipeline where if we want to purchase goods, services, go to a restaurant or whatever, for example, we can tap into this pipeline and fulfill our needs and support another Black person. If we're looking for a partnership or service provider or a job, we should have a place where we can go to just tap in. When our youth matriculate through school, they should already know that they can find a job within their own community. We should know these things. There's nothing wrong with us going downtown and working with other cultures. I love interacting with other cultures, but we should have our own. That's our base, our nucleus, where we're helping our people become happier, healthier, wealthier, and for them to experience more love. See, this is such a foreign concept to many of us as Black people, especially here in the Western Hemisphere, despite the fact that we were the primary commodity of the most lucrative trade routes ever. Listen, the triangular trade routes were more popular and not popular, but more lucrative than any ancient trade route, like the incense road, the silk road, the spice road. That's slave trade. Almost every trade route established throughout history began to sell and trade human beings because that is just how lucrative it in fact was. Greetings, Mom. Greetings, Diane Thomas. Welcome, everyone. Make sure you like and subscribe to the page. I'm going to go through our talk about the Silk Road, but I want you all to get involved. Send me some questions in the chat that we can answer at the end of this, because I want this to be interactive. And if it's not interactive with me, I want it to be interactive in your mind, right? So that you can start thinking about these things. Okay. Hope y'all got y'all tea or coffee. I got me some chai today. All right. Let's talk about slavery a little bit. When we discussed, I told you one of my favorite subjects in school was world history. We discuss certain aspects of slavery, but rarely do we discuss the business behind the slave trade. I really think that if we understood that aspect of slavery, we would have a better understanding of its long-term effects and how it helped to establish the modern capitalistic system that we live in today. 300 years is a very long time to have free labor. And if you have a business Think about that. 300 years, labor you don't have to pay for. It's no question that this contributed to America's place as the number one superpower in the world. It gave England its power, gave Brazil its power. Then the systems that were designed after the Reconstruction era continued the concept on into the next century. And then they went into sharecropping, which was then still cheap labor. Then they decided, okay, it's Jim Crow, still impacted wages. They're very, very little. Then we went into the Industrial Revolution where places or industries like meat packing houses began to exchange hourly wage for dollars or a dollar or so with Black people. And they put signs up and down the Mason-Dixon line where they said, come and work, right, in exchange for an hourly wage. And a lot of Black people were tired because during the Reconstruction era, we had the most businesses that we'd ever had. But we didn't have a military or an army to protect our businesses. And every community around the country was destroyed by terrorists who came in and destroyed our ability to be amongst ourselves and to be separate and build our own for ourselves. So a lot of people said, okay, I'm gonna go up north and I'm gonna give me one of those jobs in the factory, in the meat packing house. So that became a route. And people came up here and got these jobs. And then that was a whole nother form of predatory control. So, and we could talk about that later, but have you ever heard of the Kingdom of Aksum? It's AKSUM. They actually, at one point, it's an African kingdom that controlled the trade routes across the Red Sea. Go study the Kingdom of Aksum. Yeah. So let's take a look at these trade routes, okay? Make sure you like and subscribe to the page and hit the notification button so that you can catch up on past episodes of your favorite Mode Today shows. And like I said, I'm starting this weekend the new series called the Mode Today series on the proper handling of people. And it'll be broadcast during the Sajdah Saturday morning coffee talks. All right. So what is a trade route? Some of you all may be saying, what is that? Again, the purpose of this is to get you to studying this so that you understand that this is how civilizations, how countries, how they define themselves. They had resources, and then those resources they will go and trade and sell out into the community. And with the whole chattel slave trade, they actually went and stole a bunch of people. Let me say this too. I don't know if you guys noticed that since a lot of African countries are pushing back finally on the predatory practices of some of the countries that originally colonized them, that really have our whole continent over there divided. You got countries right next door to each other that can't even do trade because one might be colonized by the French, and the French, there's a language barrier. There's certain legal systems in France. The French have a huge tax on any money that any of its colonized countries in Africa make. And then the next door neighbor might be colonized by the British. And it's different laws, different systems, different currencies, and they can't even communicate with one another. And so ever since they've been pushing back on that, there's starting to be this propaganda put out here about slavery, where they're really trying to magnify the fact that there were some kings in Africa that originally sold people to the colonizers into slavery. But see, they're not helping us with history because they just want us to say, well, you know what? I don't know why y'all tripping. We can't give y'all reparations because your own brothers sold you into slavery. And in some cases that is true. But what happened over the course of the 300 years, Africa was severely impacted and colonized as well. So their ability to sell their own resources. Africa is the most lush continent on the planet. There's so much food there. There's so much vegetation, so many resources, so many minerals, natural resources, gold, diamonds, rubber. I mean, you can just walk down the street and just grab you some cashews or some bananas or any plant you want. Sometimes they have so much food at the market at the end of the day, they're almost giving it away because it's going to just go bad. But during that whole slave trade, when they began raping and taking millions of resources, meaning us, from Africa and spreading them around the world through the course of slavery, Africa was robbed of its ability to even sell its own natural resources. So you have countries in Africa like Liberia that is known for rubber. I think it was Firestone had a plant there, and maybe Goodyear, and they were given scholarships and everything. But the Liberian people don't grow rubber trees and sell the rubber to these companies. They don't even, most of these countries don't even feed themselves. They buy food from other countries and they're just trading one colonizer for the other. So this will give you an idea of how important these trade routes are. One of the reasons why America is in trouble today, she's in trouble because she no longer makes or manufactures anything. There's really no trade route. She's really just a consumer. And it's no coincidence that Black Americans, we are so subconsciously tied to this people that enslaved us that we too are the biggest consumers in the world. So when you think about what do we export here as a country, what we primarily export in America is Black culture. That's one of the largest exports, believe it or not. It's Black culture. You travel around the world, everybody got their hat to the back. They dance in hip hop. If they go to a club, they're putting on Black music. It's our vibe. It's our style. You got Asian countries that are just coming up with ways in which they can literally find a way to reproduce our culture so that they can all participate in the culture. I mean, it's incredible if you really look at it. So here we are as Black people saying, okay, we want to start making our own stuff. We want to start selling and trading our own stuff. Why is this important? And a lot of people will say, but yeah, I'm not really down with no all Black nothing. And I hear this all the time. And I said, you know what? If you had a beautiful subdivision and there were all Black people in it and you controlled, the safety, the security, you probably feel more comfortable there than someplace where you'd have to risk your children being harassed or abused. I think it's a good idea that when our children go to school, that we have a network of businesses that they can intern at so that when they get ready to graduate from college, they can be like these white kids and say, well, I already know what firm I'm going to go work at. I don't have to be on the interview grind like y'all Black people because I interned for 2 years at my uncle's law firm and I already know that that's where I'm about to go work when I get out of school. So the whole time they're in school, whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously, what are they thinking about? not how many applications they need to go put in so they can make sure they get a job. What they're thinking about, consciously or subconsciously, is where they're going to go work. And they already know where they're going to go work. They know what it looks like on the inside. They know the corporate culture. It'd be nice to have that. It'd be nice for some of our family members who are returning citizens, who are returning back into society after they've made a mistake, to be able to be rehabilitated by their own people and become part of the labor pool that a lot of us as entrepreneurs can choose from when we get ready to hire people. One of the biggest challenges that we have, I know I've had as an entrepreneur, is finding the right employees. And if we had that student pipeline where we knew we've been grooming a student every summer, and then when they get ready to graduate, we already know we got an accountant coming. We already know we got a lawyer coming. We already know we got a marketing person coming. We already know that because we've been building the pipeline. Sometimes we have other services and goods that we need, and some people just need a second chance. And so that's a big labor pool that if we can get ourselves healed and healthy and create the right systems, we can rehabilitate and give our people second and third chances. There's a whole lot of reasons why we have to establish these routes of trade and even if it's not a physical trade route, but a mental trade route, where let's say you come into my office and you need something. I should have a database of people from our community that I can tap to help you get whatever it is that you need. Or if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need a wedding cake, I should have a Black cake designer that I can give that person to. Again, why is that important? It's because we have so many needs in our community that no matter how much we protest, no matter how upset we get, they're not going to be met by the broader community. Because if their world is crumbling, and why is the world crumbling? Because we're seeing a global shift where countries like America, who was the number one country in the world at one point, there's a shift because now we don't manufacture anything. We have to go and do business internationally because if we want a car, some of those parts, maybe the cobalt for the battery, if we drive an electric car, it's going to come from Africa. It's going to come from China. If you buy a battery, you buy a cell phone, that cell phone is coming from likely somewhere in Asia. You buy a computer. So many things we buy today, you'll see right on there, made in China, made in Korea, made in Japan. So we have to understand that there's a major economic shift happening, and it's inevitable because we in America have stopped manufacturing. We don't make anything. So we really don't have anything to sell to anybody other than the culture. And for the most part, that's Black culture here in America. That's what we sell. We're buying a lot of stuff, but what that's going to do is that's going to even the playing field. It's going to even out the economy. So when the economy starts to even out, then the economists are going to start to tighten up the purse strings. They're going to start cinching in their waist and giving haircuts across the board on expenses. And who do you think that's going to impact? It's going to impact us. But we have enough spending power to be able to support us. So what is a trade route? A trade route is a logistical network identified as a series of pathways and stoppages used for the commercial transport of cargo. So in this case, Cargo can be anything. Cargo can be intellectual property. Cargo can be physical property. Cargo can be natural resources. So I've been putting a lot of thought around if we were to begin to have all of these separate territories and look, and one more thing, here's another reason why we have to, it's not just the returning citizens, but here's the other reason why we have to have our own. We got to educate our children. And I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but America stopped educating our children years ago. They just go there. It's a babysitter while we go to work. They're there, they reading something, but how deep are they studying? How much are they being challenged? How much are they being prepared to be global competitors? We love it when they get good grades. We love it when we say, oh, they graduated from school early. But did they really need to graduate early? Or could they have been learning a trade or some job skills or the proper handling of people so they know how to interact with people? Or could they have been learning something about global trade? Okay. We have these trade routes that were established many years ago, Silk Road and Incense Road. What they did was they allowed goods and services from one market to reach distant markets. And there were long distance arteries where you could funnel your goods and services, whether you grew spices in your backyard or whatever it was. And then the great leaders, they protected the trade and the commerce because there was something to be said about being able to receive something new and something special from abroad, and they felt the same way about you. So there was trading. There was trading. Different ways of doing things would come, ideas, all of these things would happen over these trade routes. So these really good leaders made sure that they protected the trade routes. They made sure it was safe. They made sure that you didn't get ripped off. Nobody could steal from you and snatch all your goods off your table and run down the street. There was security there. But see, right now, we are so much on our own when it comes to whether or not somebody frauds us, takes our money. These kind of things we can protect in our own community. And it don't have to be, it'd be great if we got a big state, right, for ourselves. If we got the state of Alabama and we could do trade and commerce. But I'm talking about, let's start with our subdivisions. Let's start with our communities. Let's start with our neighborhoods. Let's start there with good food, grocery stores that serve stuff that we like, restaurants where we can see our people thriving. See, this is all very important because, again, when those purse strings get tightened, it's going to be harder for our people to find jobs and opportunities in the broader community unless we make those opportunities. One thing we know about us as Black people, I don't care how much stress you put us under, I don't care how hard times get, we're going to make something out of nothing. We're going to be more successful. We're going to be creative. So as America runs out of things that it can export and create, guess who's going to still be creating? We are. But guess who now needs to own and monetize what it is that they create? See, these trade routes, they spread things like religion, trade, technology. They've been vital to the growth of any urban civilization. I mean, you can look at the Amish. They have food and all kind of things from their way of life that they sell, and they use those goods to promote their way of life. I think sometimes we get tripped out because we think that when we say, look, let's just build our own stuff, that we're going to be living in huts somewhere. But why can't you be living in a neighborhood of mansions? And it's all people that look like you, civilized people who are introducing much needed goods and services back into their community. It's a gated community and it's safe because we're policing it. We don't have to worry about theft. We don't have to worry about anybody breaking in our houses. It should even be where we wouldn't even have to put on an alarm. When our children get ready to need experiences, there's people in that neighborhood, in the subdivision, that you can say, you can call up your neighbor down the street and say, hey, my son wants to get into gaming. I know you have a gaming company. Can I send him down there to intern with you? Or you could say, you know what, my daughter wants to be a doctor. And I know you have your own practice. Can I send her over there to intern with you? See, now we got this whole ecosystem going. And that doctor and that person with the gaming company, they got somebody that they can tap when they need a new employee. So when the gaming company comes up with a game that the whole world is downloading and playing, and they need more programmers and more staff, they can call your son because your son just interned there last summer. And when they bring your son in, your son is there and he's ready to build up the company. And he may one day start his own gaming company, or he may take over that one. And guess what? When you got brothers and sisters out here who don't have any heirs. There was a woman who had something like she's a black woman, something like a $33 million real estate portfolio. And she passed away. And her children, I guess something happened either in the relationship or they just didn't demonstrate that they could handle that kind of wealth. And she began grooming young Black entrepreneurs, and she ended up turning over her portfolio, the majority of her portfolio of business upon her death, to these entrepreneurs that she had been guiding and training. And from my understanding, they've multiplied her business. She left a little bit to her children, but we have those scenarios as well. And the way she set up her company was so that it would grow and continue to build and expand. And the brothers that are working in their new company that includes her portfolio are doing really well, and they're very proud to be in that position. So there's a lot of reasons. There's enough for us to get paid. We just have to keep educating ourselves. Okay. So the extent of development of cities and the level of their integration into the larger world system or the global system has often been attributed to their position in various active trade networks. So by creating this trade network, you can go to a country in Africa and say, we'll take some of your goods, and if you take some of ours, and we begin to trade. See, we have to close this gap that was created by slavery. And there's a lot of ways in which that's going to happen. Has to happen through marriages. So we got to have relationships with people so that people can get married. And that's going to help close it a little bit. It's going to be trade. It's going to be jobs. You should be able to say, hey, I got a friend that wants to get into international commerce, trade and commerce. You should have a friend right there in your community who has connections on the motherland, or who says, hey, you know what? I'm from Sudan, or I'm from Kenya. They can get citizenship, send them over there, and we'll start trading back and forth. See, we got to think like a nation. We got a nation built. See, many of the cities here in the U.S., when the United States was established, were along these waterways. So the Native Americans, or the original people who who were on this planet, on this continent, prior to the colonizers showing up, when Christopher Columbus got lost, they were along the waterways. You had original people on the Chicago River and Lake Michigan. You had original people along the waterways in Cleveland, Detroit, Mobile, Alabama. They were there, and they were already using them for trade routes. Part of the reason why, when these ex-convicts who had escaped from Europe came to the United States, part of this, about 50,000 of them, part of the reason why they killed so many of the Native Americans was because, or so many of the original people that were here, because a lot of them were on these trade routes and they had settled there. And so it was really just an act of war. I could go on and on about that, but I'm going to stay off of that one because, okay. So anyway, in addition to goods and services, these trade routes spread religion and culture as well. Y'all doing all right over here in the chat? Yeah, it spread religion and culture. Islam was spread through commerce, through trade. Christianity was along trade routes. There's some movies that still depict this. There were like trading posts or markets, if you will, in many key strategic places around the world that were run by different people. And so imagine if we have our own area where we're selling our own goods. And I'm not talking about just a place that's got tables and tablecloths. See, part of y'all vision is bad. I know what y'all thinking, a bunch of Black people with these 6-foot tables and they got a tablecloth on them and they got all their soaps and lotions. No. I'm talking about high-end markets where people can physically and virtually purchase goods. I'm talking about multi-million-dollar mansions and businesses that are Black owned. Think Dubai. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. So if people came to visit us and came around us and they said, man, I really like them. I like the way they look. I like the way they do business. I like the way they handle people. I like who they are. Then all of a sudden, those people who are coming to you are going to do what? They're going to want to know more about you. They're going to adopt your way of life because your way of life is more successful. Believe it or not, I keep telling y'all, people are tired. People are tired of racism. They're tired of sexism. They're tired of ageism. That stuff is old. It's old. It's played out. Folks is tired of it, but they just keep pushing it in the pop culture. Just keep pushing it. And so a lot of people just tune it out. They just tune it out. If we're not acting racist, we acting like ageist. This person's too young. This person's too old. Or we got issues with people and their weight. This one's too fat. This one's too skinny. It's too much. And a lot of people are tired of the stress of it. Let me tell you, when you travel, many of you know this because you've traveled abroad, but when you go to certain countries, let's say you go certain places in Africa, and you literally can feel the burden of racism and classism lift. Don't get me wrong, these countries got their issues, but nothing is as heavy as it is here. And so you feel that. You give your central nervous system a break when you can just not think about it for a minute. I mean, we got brothers on the side of the pond trying to just fish and they can't fish in peace. So these trade routes can be good and bad. So when Africa was colonized and millions of people were sold into slavery, Trade routes were set up in many countries that transported natural resources, including the human trafficking of people from Africa to Brazil, to Argentina, to the Caribbean, to the United States, to London, to France, all throughout Europe. And many of these systems were called the triangular trade systems because they didn't have dedicated ships for one particular type of cargo in the early days. During this time, there was a system called the triangular trade, and the triangular trade was a system of trade routes that emerged during what they called the colonial periods that connected three regions and crossing the Atlantic Ocean. The trade involved the transportation of Black people that were taken from Africa to the Americas, cotton, other raw materials from the Americas to Europe, and textiles and manufactured goods from Europe to West Africa. The trade was named after the triangular shape of the routes that the ships took. And it just is wild because you may have one ship, and let's say that one ship is going from Brazil to Benin, and it may be taking fish. And so it'll have the whole bow of the ship filled with fish, and it'll sail to Benin and take the fish off and be distributed, throughout. And then they turn around and pick up some slaves and put them on that same ship and come back. These were nasty, humane conditions. The Atlantic slave trade used a system of three-way transatlantic exchanges, known historically, like I said, as the triangular trade. And it operated between Europe, Africa, and the Americas, like from the 16th to the 19th centuries. And the slave ships were outfitted in Europe, and they shipped manufactured European goods to West Africa. And the interesting thing about it is these people got all into the business of transporting all this stuff. It's pretty much what they was doing was taking it from Africa and South America, these crops and stuff, and bringing them to the Americas, to the Western America, to the US and the Caribbean, and then they would go over to Europe. But it was people, it was spices, it was anything from cinnamon to incense, it was oils, and all of this stuff was just shipped and moved. And they had these trade routes, and these trade routes were so sophisticated. And of course, they could invest in the trade routes because the labor was free. So they paid for the slaves, but they were getting free labor when they got back over here. Interesting, right? So they say that the triangular trade was used to offset trade imbalances between different regions. That's such an arrogant statement. When I read that, I said, how arrogant? You go, oh, there's a trade imbalance. We don't have this in our country, so we're going to set up this route, and you're going to give it to us for cheap. Really? You had like the Silk Road that went from what is now called Asia into what is now called Ethiopia. Some went up around through Spain, through the Moors. It's all very interesting. So I encourage you to go on YouTube. YouTube is a great university if you use it right. And just type in ancient trade routes. They also developed this. It also had a congruency with the winds and the currents. So, for example, the main trading nations of Western Europe, it was easier to sell westward after first going south and then reaching and letting the trade wind bring you back into the Caribbean and around up through North America. That's what they say now, that whole Hurricane Alley. That's the route with those trade winds that those slave ships traveled, because they were allowing the wind and the waves to carry them and follow the Gulf Stream up into the northeastern direction. But it's powerful stuff. And for those of us who are so-called religious and we got an issue with money, it takes money, y'all. Stop tripping. It takes money. We live in this capitalist society. Nobody's taking rocks and pebbles for food. So guess what? You're going to need money. It takes money to buy these all black clothes. It takes money to live. It takes money to move around. It takes money for health care. It takes money for education. Money is just a tool that a God uses to exercise the options. I'm going to say this one last thing as we get into, I'm going to get to your questions. If we begin to understand this and get this, a lot of it is taught, not as much detail. So we're going to have to get some detail. We're going to have to sit down and have some meetings and get some details. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was very, very explicit in telling us as Black people to do for ourselves and think for ourselves. He stressed that if we wanted to be respected around the world, we had to stop begging. We have to stop begging people to do for us what we could do for ourselves. And so he taught us knowledge of self, knowledge of God. He taught us that. He taught us proper handling of people. He taught us even about the measurements of the earth and the water, because he said this earth is yours. He told us that the God gave us the sun, the moon, and the stars to work out in. We just got to work out in it. Got to work out in it. But first, let's start with this knowledge, and let's start with the desire to do it, the desire to do for self. Because I'm telling you all, there's going to be a major wealth shift. It's already happening. It's going to begin to accelerate because the purse strings are going to tighten. Because in the US, if you just look at it from an economic standpoint, we don't export anything anymore other than, really, for the most part, our culture. The entertainment industry is the biggest product that the United States sends around the world. We don't make jeans, we don't make shirts, we don't make tops. We don't make a lot of cars that are going around the world. We are exporting our talents, our services. We're exporting the entertainment industry. So our movies, our music, that's what's going around the world and impacting the world. And a lot of us reject any concept of spirituality and religion, but I think we'll find out soon enough that without divine intervention guiding us and telling us what we should be focused on, who we should be talking to. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time who say, something just said to me, you're going to speak, or you're going to teach, or you're going to train, or you're going to make this product, or you're going to make this. I hear that literally every single day. So a lot of us say we accept that, but we ain't about religion. I think what we probably are not about is the hijacking of religion by people who just use it to control other people. That's not what it's about. But we're going to be into a higher level of spirituality here. It's going to be a necessity coming up here really soon. Why? Because we're going to need to think our way around this spiritual warfare that's happening around us. And we're going to need to equip our youth so that they understand how to navigate, how to be successful. If America is saved, it's likely going to be us to do it. Y'all ain't ready for that though, because we're going to be the ones to be able to do it. So we got to stop. We got to stop with the ratchetness. I'm going to get off my soapbox. All right. So Sister Sandra D said, yes, Sister Teach. Let me just put it up here. She said, yes, Sister Teach, you got me thinking hard. We need every aspect of tradesmen in our community. Yeah, our database and community involvement is key. And see, these algorithms that our world is now being based on, they are designed to predict behavior. And we can control a lot. Just like with the internet, we were able to get out here and open up businesses that maybe we couldn't have opened up 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're making money now that we couldn't have made back then. Well, guess what? We can control this algorithm and control how things are distributed in a way that we couldn't years ago. So by pooling our resources, even if it's in a smaller community, pooling our resources, coming together, we're changing those algorithms and because our behaviors are changing. See, with AI, you have to train it. You have to train Chat GPT. You got to train augmented reality. And when you train it, you're teaching it how to give you what it is that you want. And when we start conducting ourselves differently, we're going to see ourselves tapping into more power, because those algorithms are based on the fact that we're not united. We don't pool our resources. We don't read. We don't study. That's what it's based on. We don't know our history. But if we start putting more stuff into that database, guess what? There's a lot of us, and believe it or not, we can change. We can change some things. We can make a difference. All right, so let's see who else says something. Anita Rose said, Assalamu alaikum. Do you have any input on the narrative that the Atlantic slave trade did not exist, or that the majority of slaves were already here? Yeah, it's just a lie. Reason why it's a lie, sis, let's just look at it like this. There were original people already here. Before the white man got here, before the slave owner got here, the original people were already here. The Atlantic slave trade, there's evidence of it all throughout history. If you go, you can go to antique stores to this day. There's an antique store here in Chicago that have all kind of relics from the slave trade. And you can find that, especially in the South. But it definitely existed. And I wouldn't even, anybody who's trying to make you think that, I wouldn't even entertain that. See, that's part of the propaganda that they want to put out here in the lexicon so that they can stop. So they already stopped us from saying slave. They're probably going to flag this video because I keep saying slave. You have to say enslaved person. They want to make it seem as if our African people are the ones who created the slave trade and sent us over here. And that's only partially true. They are the ones who developed the whole shadow slave trade. They are the ones who benefited from slavery for 300 years of free labor. America would not be who she is, Sister Anita, if she didn't have 300 years of free labor. That's a lot. Most of these other countries, they had to pay for somebody to work for them, but not here in America. So it definitely happened. And I mean, I could go into a whole history lesson to prove it. We won't do that here today. It just kind of changes the tone of what we're talking about, but it definitely happened. The majority of slaves were already here. Think about that statement. So what they saying, when they got here from Europe, it was a bunch of slaves here? I don't know what they're trying to say. There was original people here. that they were unable to enslave. But anyway, any other questions? Anybody else in the chat? I see y'all there. So I just want us thinking. Let's elevate our mind when it comes to this teaching that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has given us about doing for self. And when he talks about establishing separate areas, separate territory, separating, let's elevate a little bit with that, because the school system has failed us. We literally need to open up our own schools. We should have a lot of independent schools. We can afford it. A lot of us are spending thousands of dollars to send our children to private schools that don't teach any type of Black pride, no type of nation building, nothing. You're talking about children walking away from school or graduating early, summa cum laude, valedictorians and all that, and they don't even know who Martin Luther King is. And let me tell you something about this history piece. See, history is so very important, because if we're looking at ourselves and saying, man, what's wrong with us? We need somebody to fix us. Well, see, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad began to fix us and gave us that medicine, he told us history. Just like if you go to an attorney, first thing the attorney's going to do is ask you the history of what you're talking about. You say, oh, my husband, he dragged me down the street, he beat me up. He's going to want to know the history, how long this been going on, what's his name, where'd he come from, how long y'all been married. He's going to ask you some historical questions so that he can begin to put together his strategic plan on how he's going to help you. Then he goes into the history of the law to see if there's any kind of legal precedence in the history of the law that's going to help him with your case. It's done with history. You go to the doctor, they use history. If they're real doctors, most times they just write you something and they don't even ask you about your history. But they should say, are you allergic to anything? Are you allergic to penicillin? Because I see you got strep throat. Before I write you a prescription for penicillin, are you allergic? Yeah. Well, tell me what happens when you have it. Oh, I go into anaphylactic shock, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. Oh, your stomach hurting? How long your stomach been hurting? Did your mother's stomach hurt? Is your mother alive? Is your father alive? Those are on the history and physical questions. If they're not alive, how did they pass away? Oh, I can't. I just keep losing and miscarriaging my children. They're going to ask you about your mother. They're going to ask you about yourself. Have you had any major surgeries? What's your diet like? They're going to ask you history in order to put together your clinical plan. So when you look at us, I was looking at the VMA Awards and I'm seeing these sisters crawling all around on the floor, hunching and humping the floor at the daggone VMA Awards in their evening gowns. Well, if you look at that and say something is wrong with us, what's wrong with us? In order to fix us, you got to know the history. You got to know about these slave breeding plantations that taught people that all you do is just breed. You got to know about the domestic violence and the sexual violence and that happens in our community, the perversion, the rape, the sex trafficking. You got to know about that. In order to fix us, you need some history. And then that person you're helping, it would be great if you could say, oh, don't worry. I know I'm telling you that you got some cancerous cells, but I can give you some examples of people who have beat this. That would help you, wouldn't it? If you told those sisters who was crawling around on the floor and said, you know what, you don't have to do this. I understand what has happened to you. I understand what you've seen. I know things that have happened to you that you probably don't know anything about several generations ago. But let me give you an example, a story about somebody who came from where you came from and they made it, and they didn't have to do what you did. It's just so many ways. You got people out here who hate their skin color. But if they knew their history, if they knew the Queen of Sheba had the same skin color as them, if they know that Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus, had the same hands as them. I'm using random examples, but I think y'all get my point. A Breckenridge, let's see what you say. I don't have any questions, but I love your streams. They are always so insightful and have me thinking. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Make sure you all like and subscribe to the page. Make sure that you tell a friend to tell a friend. Bring somebody with you next time. You can forward. We try to play some reruns throughout the week. We're live Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, Saturday morning, 6 a.m. Central Time. I've been trying to do a little bit better about doing some live videos, and I'm still working on these television shows. So I need you all to just keep supporting. I want to like and subscribe. I want to really get the numbers up so that we can just get more eyes on the content. So feel free to forward it, post it on your page. If there's anything here that you like on the page, all you got to do is copy the link and you can post it right on your Facebook. You can go to my Instagram page. My Instagram is Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, or I also have one at Sajdah House. And I also have TikTok, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. You can go on there and find contact and content and repost it. Okay. But let's get more eyes on this. I think it's important that we showcase more Black business women that are different from those that are showcased today. So I think that's important. So help me to spread that word. Let's do that. So if you have not supported the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, and even if you have, we need your continued support. So you can make a donation by going to sajdahhousedonations.com. That's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you want one of these commemorative Elijah coins that are made of the copper from the home of the messenger, and I got this cool video I'm about to make because I found something really powerful from Savior's Day, 1997, where the minister talked about dross and purification and the process of creating a conduit. And so I'm going to use some of that and just talk to you all about these coins. Or if you just say, you know what, I can only do Cash App right now, that's fine too. You see that on the bottom right there, $Mo Today, MOETODAY. All you have to do is Cash App your donation. But I think it'd be good. Get you a coin. This coin also has a membership. And on the back here, this number is going to become your membership number. And this is going to give you access to certain privileges. I have some really, really amazing things. Y'all see that I put together content. I know how to put together creative content. I've been doing that my entire adult life, whether it's building businesses. I've built over $500 million of businesses for other people. Let's build this for ourselves. And I just need you all support. Continue to like, subscribe, forward the information, make a donation, tell somebody else. We also have sponsorship opportunities available. If you want your name in the house, you want to sponsor the living room, the theater, or whatever. And you know how you go in these museums and it has on the wall who the sponsors are, or it has a little plaque next to the item that the people sponsored. Well, that could be you. And if you want a sponsorship package All you have to do, I'm putting the email in the chat. I'll stick it up on the screen. If you want a sponsorship package, all you have to do is send me, that'd be nice if I spelled right? I'm typing too fast. SajdaHouse@gmail.com. All right, let me get that. There we go. SajdaHouse@gmail.com. Okay. Thank you, Sandra D, for your comments. She said the history and culture and proper handling of people is key in this. Yes, yes, yes. This is what we're going to talk about. Anita Rose said, thanks, sis. This is my first live stream of yours, but it won't be the last. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love that picture of you and the babies on there, on your contact, on your Facebook contact. All right, family, I'm talking. We're going overboard. I got a few commercials. I'd love for you to stick around and watch. So don't go anywhere, and make sure you support SajdahHouse.com. Peace and blessings. See y'all Saturday.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that history develops the springs and motives of human action, which display themselves most powerfully in the destiny of man. History actually motivates and stimulates human action. Sometimes you may not know what to expect from yourself. But if you only could read the autobiography of someone from among your people who has achieved, then that tells you what is possible to do. Black people in America have labored without understanding the realm of possibility for black people. And because we don't know what is possible for us as a people to achieve, we labor under the misconception that the accomplishments of Caucasian people should be our guide. And as a result, we keep on trying to be like them rather than trying to be ourselves. This is a result of being robbed of history.